promote and advance equity as part of the age and dementia friendly movement, and anything that we sort of go over in the meeting. So the link to download that guide is there, and just, that's sort of a lens that we're trying to look through with this work. So to jump into the digital divide work and digital equity work that we've been doing, there's really so much going on, but there are some great opportunities that are coming up. One of which, something that I wanted to start with, was a grant opportunity from an organization called the Mass Broadband Institute. And they have grants to gateway cities to establish community Wi-Fi hotspots. So that'll be my second link that I'm putting in the chat right now. So this was just for, at one point in the recent past, this was for just municipalities to apply, but the MBI, Mass Broadband Institute, actually changed this so that a community-based organization, what MBI is calling a qualified organization, and you can kind of look at what they mean by that, but a community-based organization can partner with the municipality to actually get this done and set it up and promote the community hotspot and so on and so forth. So for all this digital equity, work that we're doing, obviously one of the huge challenges is access, and so this would be a great step in that direction for any community that's eligible. So I wanted to share that. Generally speaking, we have come up with a letter that we sent to a state task force, the Health Equity Task Force. They had a hearing about, maybe it's 3 weeks ago now, on digital equity. So we took the opportunity to submit a letter that we hope you can all use when you're advocating locally or statewide for any of this work, but really just some basic points that it's not just about older adults having access, but sort of the entire community having access. Otherwise, if you just address schools or housing or councils on aging, libraries, or whatever it is, you're missing several pieces of the puzzle. So we advocate for this to be community-wide, to be aware of just all kinds of stats and equity issues along the way. But rather than sort of just go through it all, I am going to include this as sort of our third link in the process here, just our continuing rolling resources that I'm sharing. So hopefully you can take this letter and build off it for anything that you're working on locally or with state partners. But we plan to adapt this letter to advocate to other groups. So we've submitted it to the state legislators joint committee on elder affairs. There's a telecom access commission, one of the hundreds of commissions that are set up at the state level. There's a telecom access commission. They have this letter as well, and I encourage you all to amplify this letter or take the points that are relevant to you and your communities and your organizations and advance those. And then the last thing that I wanted to share on digital equity is that State Senator Adam Hines, who some of you may know represents the Berkshires and I think bits of the Pioneer Valley, has a piece of legislation.
Are you in school?
Oh, has a piece of legislation that, and this is going to be the last thing that I put in the chat, and you can see this legislation. It's an act promoting universal access to broadband internet. It's very basic. It's just sort of a starting point in the whole discussion and conversation, but you can kind of see where some of these policies are trying to go. And because, the Senator Hines sort of touches the Pioneer Valley a little bit with his legislative district, it might be great for his office to hear from some folks around this table about how this could impact older adults and, any other constituents or, folks that you're all serving and supporting. So that was my lightning round. There's plenty of other opportunities that we're looking at. There's actually yet another group at the state legislature level that's looking at sort of post-COVID resiliency and adaptations, and how society adjusts post-COVID. So the Senate the state Senate is looking at sort of a series of statewide listening sessions that will probably be virtual, and just other ways of taking comment. But we plan on sort of submitting all this digital equity stuff to that group as well. But just, something for you all to be aware of in that regard. So Becky, that was my lightning round of digital equity work, but happy to share or take questions or, put more details on anything that I just laid out.
Thank you. So does anyone have any questions? We actually have a little more time if anyone has any questions for James. And
so if not, if I have some space here, I do want to share there's one other funding opportunity that we're promoting sort of outside of digital equity, and that's the ARP Community Challenge Grant. This is certainly more broad, and it's another link in the chat. But you're not prohibited from using this for digital equity concerns, whether it's purchasing devices or setting up a your own community Wi-Fi hotspot or whatever you'd want to do with it. But there's certainly other things, like if you've heard of placemaking and using like activating public spaces to be more accessible and inclusive of older adults and the community at large. There's all kinds of things that you can look at this link. It's meant to be shovel-ready projects. The grant, I think, is due in mid-April. So it's sort of a quick turnaround, and it's meant to be, just quick production of sort of local initiatives, but something I hope you'll all take a look at. And I actually thought, Becky, of one more thing that we're doing that something that I missed is that we worked with the Worcester Public Library. Oh, there you go. Thank you, John. Stepping up. Our most recent age-friendly community out in Ware. So we worked with the Worcester Public Library on getting a mini grant to sort of loan out iPads and devices to older adults, and then train older adults to be sort of community tech support resources for fellow older adults in the community. So the library and many libraries across the state already do some of this digital literacy work anyway. Worcester just happened to have a brand new computer lab and a lot of sort of expertise on the subject. So we started working with Worcester. They got the mini grant. They're going to be starting this pilot program, and then we hope it will be a model that other communities can replicate where, if you are aware of the reframing aging concept and that those sort of communication tools and tricks around older adults being assets in the community and not just, a group that is a burden on state costs or the healthcare system, or, getting away from terms like the silver tsunami and all this negativity around aging and just posing aging as the positive that it should be. We are trying to also position older adults as resources for digital literacy, get away from the myth that older adults, can't or are somehow magically unable to use technology. So there's lots of different angles to this, but the point is, if we can prove that this works in Worcester for a diverse community on short money, relatively short money, we think this can be replicated in, most any mid-sized to large community with a library that has staff that, that can reasonably handle this. So we're excited about that project. We're working on other initiatives with libraries to put things on cable access so that people can tune in at a certain time and learn how to use Zoom or their iPhone or whatever it might be. So we have a lot of things cooking on this issue. So if you're interested in any of it, I'll put my email in the chat, and that should be enough to keep everybody busy for a long time. But feel free to reach out and contact me if you have any questions.
James, who funded that program?
So that was through an organization called the Mass Service Alliance. So it was grants up to $4,000 and it's supposed to kind of train and activate volunteers. So these will all be older adult volunteers that are stepping up to do this. We couldn't buy them the iPads, but we were trying to find some way of rewarding and incentivizing people to take this on, but the devices have to be loaned out by the library. They're pretty strict about some of that stuff. So, but it is the Mass Service Alliance. I think it's a COVID-19 resiliency grant is what it was called. So we're a partner. We're going to help kind of promote this, kind of recruit older adults to be the volunteers, but also the trainees, the people that learn how to use whatever they want to do. But the Worcester Library does amazing stuff, from Zoom tutorials to researching your genealogy online and virtual cooking classes and all kinds of stuff. So they have a good variety pack of issues and subject areas that they try to hit on. So
Great. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
So I don't see any questions. If I don't see you, please just unmute yourself if you have any questions. Okay, if not, I'll turn it over to Sinan from Babson College. And Sinan, you do have the ability to share your screen if you'd like, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and your colleagues.
Sure. Thank you, Becky, and thanks for having us this afternoon. My name is Sinan Erzurumlu. I'm a faculty member at Babson College, and about a year ago, we started a innovation lab, future lab, and our intention is to focus on complex social challenges. And the lab has been busy since its foundation, looking into challenges that older adults face, and maybe we all face with aging. And for the past year, we have been predominantly looking into the equitable access and utilization of technology for older adults. And this has started with the pandemic, particularly. Social isolation has never been a recent problem, but it just has been exacerbated in the recent year since the pandemic has started. So we started looking into how we might overcome this issue, and how to understanding the structural needs and the information needs, but also the context of the older adults. What do older adults think about technology, and what they would like to accomplish with technology? And I think we all experience that more than ever. The circumstances that we are in have been pressing us to think about these issues more deeply than ever. But our lab is optimistic in the sense that even we don't need a pandemic to bring older adults and close the digital divide. There are lots of things internet and technologies offer to older adults, and our lab wants to bring older adults with the intention to improve their social engagement, but then also give them the tools and the knowledge to define what internet should be for older adults. And with my group, I sometimes jokingly say, like, look, when I was 5 years old, I don't think I had a chance to define and design my own future. But with the lab right now, I feel like maybe we could make some changes to see the future that we would like to see ourselves in. So our group has been predominantly looking into the social isolation issue, and I have my student partners here, and they will talk a little bit about what they have been examining in this broad space. So to put things in context, actually, we've done some summer work where we have talked with experts and older adults, and our group has found out like 3 areas that we should focus on to complement to tackle this challenge, but then complement it with the right tools and the right services for older adults to fully enjoy the benefits of the internet and technology. So our first group, inspired with this work, has been looking into equitable access to technology and broadband use. They have examined the devices and broadband services. Our second group, they have been looking into particularly digital literacy and improving digital literacy and skills, and the existing programs. They have looked at it in different levels. And we have a third group, and they have been looking at other opportunities that they could develop if older adults were given the access and the right means to flourish on the internet and with the other technologies. So I would like to now invite my student partners to help me out with this. They have been immersing themselves into this problem space for the past 2 months now almost. And we have some preliminary findings, and the group is still working on this. So by all means, this is we would like to keep this an open conversation, but we also do believe we have come up with some interesting directions that we believe we must address, or organizations must address, if we would like to provide the services in the right manner. And I would like to add that our approach is a human-centered design thinking approach. So while we research the landscape of technologies and devices and programs for older adults, trying to make sense of which programs, which technology would work for which older adult. Everybody has different needs. Nobody shares the same knowledge or skills or comfort level with technology. And you and I, we all experience the same things as well, as technologies are becoming more thrown at us at every single facet of our lives. So our group, while they look into that landscape, they also spent a lot of time by talking with older adults and understanding their context. So we are identifying the challenges, not from an external point of view, but internally with the older adults. So you will see in these presentations, and we hope that it could give you some perspectives. And we're still working on it, so it's a work in progress. But our door is always open for feedback and for new collaborators and for new partners to help us shape the story, the narrative in this space, and bring the right solutions to the older adults. So I'm going to now continue our conversation in two presentations. Our first group, representing our first group, Nick is going to talk about connectivity packages and equitable access to technology. And then Mula and John are going to take the stage, and they will talk about under the pillar of services and support systems that for digital literacy. So I'm going to stop sharing right now, and Nick, I'm going to pass the baton to you.
Thanks, Sinan. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Just let me know if you all can see what I'm sharing. Perfect. So again, thank you so much for being here, and we're really happy to be a part of this project. And exactly as has been said before, we need to look at older adults as contributing members of society and kind of shift away from this ageist perspective of the fact that they're a drain on society in some way, but also helping them feel the same way as well, by providing them with a sense of purpose, by providing them with connectivity, and by providing them with the ability to be just as active and just as able as they were before. We can really improve their lifestyle and actually help society overall. In our research, we basically started by first speaking to some experts, and then after interviewing some older adults into getting an idea about what their life is like. We spoke to a few older adults like Hugo Rengifo, who works with the Senior Suicide Depression Program at the Cambridge Health Alliance, Christine Nagel, who works with the Community Partnership at the Goddard House, and a multitude of others like Cynthia Wilkerson, who works at Little Brothers, and Anaga Kumar, who works at the Concordium. The last two are organizations that work in older adult digital literacy. And with this, we came up with a few insights that really stood out to us. What seemed to be the challenge was that older adults that are first reluctant to get onto the internet basically feel so because they don't realize what it has to offer for them and how it seems like it's a thing for kids, it's for the younger generation, and it feels out of reach. But once they actually start getting used to it and start trying things, they get a lot more comfortable with it and are actually quite good at being able to use technology. But within that as well, there's the difference between age. Along with that, we realized that older adults need a lot of affirming and a lot of patience in learning how to use the internet and devices, which is something that is unfortunately in short supply. And the organizations that do work with older adults have learned this and are effectively deploying this to get them to use the internet effectively. But the biggest issue that we noticed as I'm going to walk through our journey map is the fact that there is a distinct lack in connectivity, but also sustainability in connectivity. This map shows the Massachusetts breakdown by county in where older adults, in households with older adults that also have access to internet and also a computer. You can see that it's quite sparse towards the western end of Massachusetts, and there are certain counties which are actually quite low. And for the population of Massachusetts, this is a bit shocking. For some of the other counties, you can also see the breakdown by percentage that have access to internet. These numbers are a little bit older. They're from 2018. But you can see that, for example, Suffolk County is not doing so well, and Nantucket County, however, has a really high rate of internet access. All of these things really kind of show how inequitable it is in different parts of the country, of the state, and how we need to basically tackle the problem from there. In our interviews, we started plotting the journey of older adults and how they gain access to the internet. And we realized that it's not different older adults, but the same older adults on different parts of the same timeline. There are different points in that journey. And in that journey, that starts with first reluctancy and hesitancy, that moves on to a desire for internet access, then actually getting an internet connection, learning how to use the device, and then gaining access to content and options for connectivity that helps eliminate social isolation. But each of these points in the journey can be broken down into its own map of sorts. And it starts with the older adults moving from reluctancy and hesitancy to desire. This primarily happens as they get introduced to technology. It takes a little bit of convincing from their friends and family, from their community, from elder coalitions, from their community centers, that basically show them how their lives can be improved by having internet access and how it's not as complicated as it seems. While there are some frustrations that are around this aspect of shifting from reluctancy to desire, the biggest frustrations come when they're actually trying to get access to the internet. For them, they basically either then switch to using community access or personal access. One of the two is how older adults end up getting access. And from access, they move on to basic use. With community access, they rely on, for example, the Oates Senior Planet Center or the local Y and the library for being able to have access to a computer and the internet. But for personal access, they struggle with trying to understand what is the bandwidth usage they need, what is it that they're going to have to pay for this internet access. And it becomes really challenging for them to really figure this out if they don't have friends or family who is paying for the internet or actually helping them get access to it. With this comes the fact that once they move on from basic use, they need to get literacy. Now, we found that older adults tend to limit their learning because they don't really see a significant boost to their lifestyle if they do actually invest the time. And it seems more frustrating than their time is worth in learning more about the internet and how they can use it. So they become frustrated with when things in a computer change, when they press a button that they're not familiar with, and they're happy with the limited use that they have. The older adults that continue learning basically go on to talk about go on to exploring the internet and then adopting it as a part of their lifestyle. As they do, however, this is where the biggest point of contention comes in, is that a lot of times the internet that is provided is subsidized or is made affordable through some plan or through the government, through legislation. And when that is taken away, they're left without a major piece of their life. And so we realized the problem that we need to address is primarily how can we provide an internet connectivity package for older adults, but most importantly, how can we make it sustainable? That they don't run out of access after a year, after 2 years, that the subsidies don't wane away. And with that, we're looking at trying to work with internet service providers, with local communities, in trying to see, for example, if a lot of times families are the ones that pay for the internet for older adults. But if they don't, the older adult is paying for bundled access through the internet via cable. And if the cable access, for example, for one of the older adults we spoke to, was paying $200 for a month for access to television, but because she wanted specific channels, it was just adding on a pack, and therefore they need a modular solution that works for them and doesn't necessarily prey off of their needs. Along with that, we realized that maybe in certain cases, building a community access, for example, how large apartment buildings have a single access to the internet that is dispersed among each individual household. If a similar access could be built for a neighborhood where older adults are predominantly living, that could reduce prices and offer internet access to a larger number of older adults. And these are some of the solutions that we're looking at. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Sinan. Thank you very much.
Sinan, you're muted.
Thank you. By the way, I say this all the time. The other day I was walking on the street and somebody was wearing a T-shirt says "You're on mute." So I think I'm going to buy it and wear it for the longest time. So to say the least, I think Nick's point is well taken, because we went into identifying, is it a Chromebook, is it an Apple iPad, or is it this broadband, that broadband? But we were always finding even successful national programs have an end, they provide a broadband service subsidized for a year, and then the rest is another struggle to extend that service. So as we are offering older adults, making them comfortable, showing them how to use these technologies, that part of the 1 year, 3 year plan seems like it left us a big gap, and our group is identifying that looks like a big barrier. Either we push it down the street, down the road, and then, or just we'll deal it when we get there. And our group is how can we design it early on, and what would be the right forces to put it in place? But of course, it doesn't stop there. We want to recognize older adults. We want older adults to recognize the full potential of internet. So our second group, student partners, John and Muna, are going to now talk about the digital literacy and skills that older adults might need.
Okay, so I'm hoping everyone can hear me and see my screen. Perfect. So I want to start off by saying thank you for everyone for having us here. My name is Muna, and I'm here with John, and including the rest of our group, Rafa and Catherine. We make up the digital literacy team. So we're summarizing a lot of information that we are more than happy to distribute to anyone who wants a better read through. So as Sinan mentioned, within this learning process, we've talked to a lot of older adults and experts, and the following are just 11 experts that we were able to interview since the end of January. So some of the key takeaways have been definitely focusing on the messaging and reframing. We've also noticed that there doesn't seem to be much communication among experts in this space. So we're seeing a lot of organizations independently trying to solve for digital literacy with their own materials, and in many cases, they're duplicating existing efforts. That said, these materials are funneled to older adults, primarily through religious affiliations, healthcare experts, and and local and identity-based communities. We've also noticed a trend in effective learning by means of intergenerational learning and peer-to-peer training. So with our older adults, we saw a fear of losing trusted figures who would now be retiring, and a lot of fear in losing communities due to the nature of this COVID environment. In terms of technology, we're seeing a mistrust in it itself, and a lot of setbacks primarily due to troubleshooting, tech jargons, and just finding resources for technology education. And then finally, when it comes to trainings, there are concerns about how engaging the material actually is, and then learning preferences, because face-to-face will always be number one. So here are some of this, or here is the same companies with the reach and training capabilities. And as you're able to skim down the list, you'll see that trend for peer-to-peer and intergenerational trainings. And of course, we're happy to send this out to anyone who wants a better read. And then finally, here we've grouped the programs into one-on-one phone calls with experts, group Zoom information calls, and then group activity gatherings. I'll now pass it over to John.
Yeah, so in addition to the interviews and meeting with the experts, we did speak to quite a few older adults, and we really want to take a human-centric approach with them, not only listening to what they do and what they say, but really trying to get a true understanding of what they think and feel about certain things. With that information, we built out empathy maps and then built out these personas. So we have our first persona here is Harriet, who's on the higher tech side and low isolation, 68 years old. Her goals is to help other church members with their medical and end life matters. She does some things outside, like trying to learn a new language. She likes to send and receive photos for family, attend church via Zoom, and she also serves as a literacy coach to local kids. Our journey map, we talk about, her typical Sunday is, again, attending a virtual service, maybe doing some tutor literacy online, some logging, some volunteer hours, and joining a social group. And then we broke down to, some programs that we found that might work for someone in this profile. Generations Inc. is a organization that does train older adults for coaching. I know James talked about that a little bit earlier about leveraging older adults to participate and help with some of the literacy. So that's an organization that helps with that. And then another program, Oats and their Senior Planet organization would be good for someone within this profile. This Harriet profile is very social, so the Senior Planet's got a lot of lunch and learns and social groups that she can certainly join. Next slide, please. The other persona that we saw when speaking is Nelson. That's on the other end of the spectrum, kind of low tech, high isolation, 82-year-old man. Depends heavily on dinner groups, and it's not really motivated to meet new friends or join social groups. Would really just like more assistance with the groups that he's with. Experiences some pain, some disabilities, and mistrustful of others. So trust is a big thing. His main goals is really just learning to use the Chromebook, how to log on to Zoom to attend the virtual monthly dinner group that he does participate in. So his journey map is really setting up the advice, getting access to mail, figuring out how to download Zoom and join the meetings. Some of the programs that we've talked about that might fit and model, like some of the models that would go for his persona would be the Concordium, the Fenway LGBT is a similar model, in the Jewish, where they do sort of one-on-one matching up. The sorry, drawing a blank. The Jewish Children and Affairs groups, they partner with Brandeis University and have students kind of partner up with older adults. And again, that's a one-on-one learning training that might be a good model. Another program that we saw is Learn My Way, which again, that's probably another next phase for a Nelson type, where if he wanted to try to learn some skills on his own, it's a little bit slower paced. Next slide, please. All right, so some of our problem statements and next steps based off of our research is how might we leverage trusted relationships to train older adults in technology. So utilizing folks like you, neighborhoods, local community networks, libraries, and organizations to assist with these older adults. How do we leverage them and partner to build that trust between the older adults and the learning process? To the right, how might we illustrate creative tech uses and help older adults feel successful in accomplishing their personal goals? We kind of label this as the hook. Like, how do we get them to want to participate and see the benefit? How do we, is it recipes or Google Maps, things that they're interested in that rather than just saying you need to learn this technology, but really getting into what the benefit is for them and why they would want to participate. Another, how can we promote a more unified discussion? So again, the beginning of this meeting, James provided a plethora of great resources and links and all this information. How do we create either a third-party hub or best practices for getting access to that and kind of seeing all that information? Can we create and organize a forum or a panel similar to this? And if we do create some sort of online forum or access to this information, how might we keep that updated and fresh? And then last, how can we make independent digital literacy learning fun, effective, and interactive for older adults? A lot of the adults that we spoke to said that learning needs to be fun, they need to be interested in it. So that's another challenge that we're trying to look to see what's the best way of doing that, getting that hook. So that is where we're at there, and sort of our next steps is kind of attacking these problems and figuring out solutions.
Great, thank you, John. And if I'd like to summarize, there's a lot of things to digest in this work, but we find that we need trusted technological brokers who need to act as strong bridges between the digital touch and human touch. Like in every technology, it's really not a solution by Zoom. It's not really a solution by finding a device, but it's that hand that holds the older adult to cross that bridge. We are finding that organizations that have successfully done that, remember them, invested in that human element of technology adoption, and they are doing this successfully. And the other thing, as the slide I have shown, the future is already here. It's not just evenly distributed. We're finding that technologies and programs are abundantly available. If you could do the research, like James, a great resource. I've seen him in many webinars, and he's always a wealth of information, and through his organization as well. Helps us connect to these resources, but then the rest is one person in the organization that older adults trust, takes that responsibility, really helps this diffusion go very well. And we have some case examples for that. And with that, I'd like to thank my student partners and thank you for your attention. I've seen a few questions on the chat box, but I would leave it to Becky just to make sure that we're on time. But I thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, that was great. So we have a couple minutes for questions. There were a couple in the chat. First of all, let's see. There was a question about whether there is a breakdown of 65 plus with access to internet on a more local basis. I think that may be available in the census, but I don't know, did any of you look at that? Yeah.
I'll take that. So we were kind of trying to find that information as well, but we weren't able to find a specific breakdown by age. We were just able to find the 65 and over, but I'm pretty sure that the data that we found was from the census as well. So a little deeper digging, we should be able to find something.
Becky, can I just follow up on that very quickly? This
Yeah,
is Mike
sure.
from Evelyn. So I just wanted, so that data was from the 2010 census or a state census?
I can double check. I think that was from a state census, but it was from 2018.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'd be interested to see if there's information that you presented, but on a community level as opposed to a county level, so that we can look at it locally as to what are, like in Agawam, what is my seniors access to internet specifically when we're trying to provide services.
I should be able to pull down, like, depending on the county or based on where the zip code is, I think getting access to that information would be possible. And kind of breaking that down. I also looked into kind of where there are the density of population of senior centers across Massachusetts, because we were just looking at it really broadly. But breaking down this information with a little bit of a deeper dive should be very easy.
Thank you.
James, you had a question?
Yeah, this is great. I've been working with Sinan for a little bit and some of the students, and it's always great work. And thank you for doing it and helping us get to some of these solutions that we're all trying to get to. So just one suggestion on sort of the journey map, if I can, that, you know, it may be nitpicky and coming from me, I can't help myself, but just say that if we can have some older adults start that journey map that already start with access and awareness, so that not every older adult is reluctant and, you know, not digitally literate, or whatever term we're using. I think that would just be helpful to showing, like, not every older adult has the same journey and path. So just a quick suggestion.
Absolutely, I'm 100% with you. It's just I apologize if it wasn't clear, but it was just meant that a lot of these older adults, they end up at different points in that journey based on where they are today. So that's why we kind of broke the journey map into those different spaces, was so that if an older adult is later on in that journey, then you know that this is what their problems are, what they're facing with. But it also means that they've already been through the first half of that journey to get there. And so the idea behind that is realizing that no matter what the solution that needs to go out, if you need to, you can look backwards in that journey and see, okay, maybe they're struggling with that now, and that wasn't done the best way possible. Or realizing that somebody who's at the absolute beginning of that journey might need to go through all of these steps as well. That was what we were trying to hope to achieve with that, is realize that it's a complex problem with a lot of layers, but they apply to each person almost in a similar way.
Yeah, no, I know there's only so much you can put on a slide as well. So no, I thought it was great. It's just sort of my interpretation, but thanks for the clarification.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. We may have more time for questions in the end, or if you have additional questions, put them in the chat and we will forward them to the Babson crew.
Becky, I'll also leave my email address in the chat box, so anyone would like to follow up, please feel free to. We know that it takes a community to tackle with these issues. Anything you would like to throw in our way, we're more than welcome to look at it and investigate it at the lab. So please feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you. So next we're going to hear from a few of you who have done some technology loan programs through your Council on Aging or other organization. And so I'd like each of you to just spend a few minutes saying what your challenges are, or successes, and then we have some time for discussion and questions there. So I wanted to start with B Dewberry from Wayfinders.
Hi, hello everyone. I feel like James and Sinan and you guys have touched on a lot of what we're doing at Wayfinders with our older adults. So at Wayfinders, I'm the community building and engagement manager, and I work specifically in Springfield. A lot of our work centers around working with older adults. We're funded by Tufts Health Plan Foundation grant, as well as some other grants to do capacity building work with residents, but particularly older adults, and around things like community advocacy around complete streets, but also digital equity. And we recently got a mini grant from Health New England. It's a digital equity and inclusion mini grant. It was $3,000, which seems like not a lot, but we're excited because we feel like we're going to do a lot with $3,000. Our program, it's called Logging In, and digital inclusion for older adults in underserved neighborhoods. So our target area is Mason Square neighborhood in Springfield in particular. And that's 4 neighborhoods centrally located in Springfield, Mass, largely African American and Latinx population that live in those neighborhoods. And what we found at the start of the pandemic is a lot of the older adults that we have been engaging with in person in some of our programs were really challenged, technology challenged, either didn't have device or have the capacity and skills to use the devices. And some of the programs that we have is we have a chair aerobics class for older adults that was meeting twice a week in person. We do monthly community advocate meetings where they're connecting with city leaders and each other. We were doing in-person mentoring programs with neighborhood youth called Pop Up and Play, Let's Play activities with neighborhood youth and community police. So our older adults are extremely busy in our work, and which is called the Healthy Hill Initiative and Flexing Civic Muscle. And also want to add climate justice work with older adults. But anyway, what we found at the start of the pandemic is only a few were able, once we went online for everything, only a few were able to participate. And we had an AmeriCorps Vista who called, all of the older adults who were previously engaged in our programs and said, how can I help you get connected? And it started on the phone with text groups, literally. And a few she was able to sort of talk through on her own. She created a YouTube video that was literally a step-by-step on how to use your smartphone to at least join a Zoom. And from there, that at least brought them back in a basic way. And but then they faced a lot of frustration. And it was interesting, some of what your students uncovered, Sinan. We found a lot of distrust over using the internet to engage, a lot of fear of, releasing personal information, a lot of people feeling that even a smartphone was sufficient way to do it. But the more they became engaged, the more they saw the challenge with using a phone. You really can't engage fully in a meeting. A lot of these folks were the ones going to city council meetings, speaking up. They found they couldn't do that. So as a result, we at Wayfinders decided to find some funding to see how we could at least reconnect the people we were previously connected with. And I'll be honest with you, we weren't successful at first. It took several grant submissions before we got the Health New England one. So we're extremely excited. They saw the value in our program. With this, we're able to buy 10 Chromebooks for those who had no devices at all. And then we're able to provide one-to-one training with 10 residents who had no to limited skills in using virtual tools like Zoom. And then training for 3 peer coaches who are taking advanced training courses, who will then serve in the role of training others and then helping our newly trained become more proficient so we can build some sustainability. So we have more residents who can now get trained. And we're able to do that with that little bit amount of money. We expect to reach at least 40 or more residents, and we're hoping the ripple will result in even greater reach. And it started, so we're pretty excited about that. And I'll tell you, our biggest challenge right now is still the trust issue. We've had people express interest in signing up, and then they get a phone call from a virtual stranger saying, let's get you started. And I guess we live in that age where, everyone wants to sell you a car warranty or something. So there's still some trepidation about, trusting this, unfamiliar voice and person, and now inviting them in via a device and helping them train you how to use it. I'll tell you our success. We have one resident in particular. She's a community dynamo, and she was someone who was really hesitant, but was still using her phone. And so as she's engaging in meetings, we'd see the top of her forehead, or, it was really a challenge. And now she has her device. She has started her training, and she recently shared with me, like she feels her power returning. So that's amazing. And in our Zoom exercise class, we had 3 residents. We're now up to about 10. And in the beginning, the social isolation, we were hearing from them, I cannot handle not going to my biweekly chair aerobics class. So even on Zoom, it was, you guys are giving me a reason to get up. And now they're starting to do even workshops on Zoom. So it's been pretty phenomenal.
Thank you, B. That's great to hear. Jay from Northampton, do you want to give an update on what you guys are doing?
Yep, sure. Just a little bit of an intro. When our senior center was open to our membership pre-pandemic, we had a computer lab with 10 desktop computers, and we had 3 or 4 computer tutor volunteers that came in and conducted classes or did one-on-one trainings with folks on their own devices. And so it was pretty robust program. And when we closed the doors, there was quite a loss there in the use of, digital devices and access to the internet. And also when we closed our doors, we recognized quickly that we needed to start providing programming online, and that was going to create some challenges for folks. So we started up our tech loan and training program with money, grant money from the CARES Act. We purchased, we had 5 Chromebooks already, and then we purchased 5 SIM card enabled iPads. And when we first started the program, we had 2 volunteers to assist us with deployment and training on those devices. People could, call us up or send us an email, asked to borrow a device. We conducted an intake with them to find out what their access to the internet was, and also sort of what their needs were at that time. So that's how the program started, and fits and starts. We lost one of our 2 volunteers, unfortunately. And so, but we felt that it was really necessary to continue on with this program. And there are no income qualifications or restrictions. It's open to all the members of the Senior Center, Northampton Senior Center. It's really designed to introduce technology and connect folks to our virtual programming that we offer, as well, for exercise and for education and recreation, and for connection to their loved ones, their friends. And the main goal is to reduce or mitigate the effects of loneliness and isolation for our older adult community. What has worked well has been sort of this ramping up from 5 Chromebooks and 5 SIM card enabled iPads to 15 more iPads that we're able to purchase, not SIM card enabled. So that creates a little bit of a challenge in that folks who don't have access to the internet may not be able to use those if they borrow them. Folks used to kind of rely on community access through the library, through the senior center, through cafes. But with the pandemic and the inclement weather, we're finding that that's more of a challenge. Also, what had worked well was sort of the development and the execution of the program. Started out slowly, kind of built up as we went along, fixing challenges as we found them. Also, one of the best things that's happened is the one volunteer that we did retain is conducting one-on-one training and holding the hand of the senior through the process, very patient, very detail oriented, and provides all kinds of information, not just training on the devices themselves, but also, providing information like how much bandwidth do you need for the things that you want to do with the device, how to sign up for low cost internet access through Internet Essentials through Comcast, and other low cost, and also walks them through that process if that's something that they need. Let's see. And we also had a great marketing program for getting the word out. We have, a monthly newsletter. We have email blast every week on Fridays, and we also have a Facebook page. So the information goes out every week. People know about it. They would get calls and emails to sign up for it since the pandemic began. So it's pretty successful in that way. But the biggest challenges are that, the fact that we have more devices than we have people who can train older adults on the use of them. And it feels like a drop in the bucket compared to the needs that are out there. And the other biggest challenge is the folks who don't have internet access and don't currently have access in the community because of whatever reasons, the libraries being closed, cafes not being accessible, the inclement weather is a problem. We were successful in working with our Board of Health to set up a risk mitigation plan to use a small part of our senior center, which is currently closed, being used for vaccination site. And we're able to set up a safe training environment. And that's been very helpful. Unfortunately, also feels horribly inadequate at this time because we feel like there's much more need than we're able to, provide assistance with. So. The way we train folks is, one-on-one. We have the trainer sits at one table, the trainee sits at another. They have monitors that they can connect the devices to. So what the trainer is working on, the trainee can see on their monitor and vice versa. So it's safely distanced. There's plastic barriers or plexiglass barriers between them, and taking all the precautions. The devices that we use are preloaded with the more popular apps. We train on how to use Zoom, how to access Zoom, how to set up email accounts and use email accounts, and all of those things that a lot of us kind of just take for granted. The other thing is that the trainer is not only available during the one-on-one training, but also by phone and sort of on standby. And we'll also do follow-up sessions with individuals who request them if something's not clear. We're also working with Community Action Youth Works, who is helping us with various aspects of the program, one of which is possibly setting up some training videos that hopefully, we'll be able to share with others as we continue on with this program. And so, yeah, all of the resources that we've developed can be shared. They're scalable. They can be replicated or adopted by any other organization that needs them. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jay. And I understand you helped Westfield set up a program too, which is great.
Yeah, there's been a couple of senior center COAs in the area, that kind of caught wind of it, and I'm really happy to share that information with them, and share the wealth, get it out there. Let's get going with this. So yeah.
Thank you. So we have Chicopee, Holly, or Sherry. Do you want to share what you've been doing? Let's see if I can see. Holly, I think you're muted. So, Holly, Angelo, are you on another? Okay, 1 minute. I guess while we're waiting for Holly, Jessica, do you want to just share quickly what Belchertown's doing?
Sure. So we have a very small iPad loan program that we received a grant for through West Mass Elder Care. We currently have 6 iPads that we are able to loan out. It's a very easy registration process. The clients either call myself or our program coordinator. It's an outside drop off or go home with your Meals on Wheels drivers. Some of the challenges, setting up iPads are a little difficult. They're not really meant to be a loan program. They're really personalized. So date of birth, that kind of thing. It's constantly reminding us to set up our Apple Play. So if a senior has the iPad, we're telling them just skip that, but it continually comes up. We've had some successes though. People seem to take to them. They're fairly easy to navigate. We do offer a monthly support group to help with decluttering. And one of our residents actually was able to join it because she had an iPad from our program. So that was one of the big successes, and they come in small batches nowadays. So we'll take it and run with it. But other than that, I think we'll stick with our 6. We don't have a wait list currently. So the program seems to be running pretty good. We don't have a specialized trainer. It's just myself and our program coordinator. So if we can't figure it out, we're calling ourselves around. But like I said, it's just a small program, but it seems to be working pretty well.
Thank you. Holly, were you able to get on?
Well, it's Sherry. We're on now.
Sherry.
So we actually have 10 iPads that we received through a grant through West Mass Elder Care, the CARES grant, and they're all booked on a 3-week cycle. We have a long wait list, and our IT person came up with a booklet on how to get onto the iPad, and it's pictures plus text. So it's been very successful. People have found it easy to get on and do what they needed to do. The devices, they sign in and out. They have an agreement between us, and all the devices are linked to 2 Apple accounts that we have, and we control them. And they're also hooked up with the Apple Find My iPad, which we've had to use several times. So that's been helpful. We did also just apply for 10 more iPads through the MCOA the one that they gave us was Alexa. We're going to have 15 Alexa with a video, so they'll be where they want to with their Alexa. And so our IT guy is going to set those up for them through probably working with our Chicopee Electric, making sure that they have internet service there. And though we didn't get the MCO grant for the iPads, they are actually going to loan us 8 of them that they have because they know that our program has been pretty successful. I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have questions? Or anyone else have a working on a program that you want to share about?
Hi, do you mind if I ask a quick question?
What?
I was wondering if you had any luck with Android tablets and why, if they were more challenging than the iPads?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, we had about 50 Androids and we were never able to get them to work. We actually still have them. They just, with our internet service, it was very complicated and it was much harder for seniors to try and figure out how to use those versus the iPad.
Wonderful. Just as a suggestion or something to try, there's a certain app called Simple Mode, which is basically like a launcher for Android. I'd be curious to see if that helps in any way and makes it easier for older adults to access the pad and see if it works for them, just as a suggestion to try something slightly different.
Okay,
Great.
we'll definitely.
Ask, Holly, I know you said that you had a, it sounded like you have a tech guy that handles your material for training and resources. Does everyone have their own pretty much individual person creating resources for training, or how does, I think Jay talked a little bit about some training stuff, but how does that work?
Yeah, so our tech trainer does produce training materials and handouts specifically for the program. And it's, you know, shareable, like easy iPad basics, that type of thing. And we are hoping that the YouthWorks folks will be able to produce some training videos for us that we can just add onto the desktop of the iPads. Our IT department does sort of help us with all of the management and the back end stuff. So which helps with those. I think it was Jessica who mentioned, you know, some of these things that keep popping up on the iPad messages. That's all kind of taken care of in the background by our IT department, so we don't have to worry too much about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? I see James asked if the guide is shareable, the Chicopee guide, or it'd be great if any of you who've created guides could send them to me, and then I'll send them out to the group or post them.
Definitely, we can send that to you.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? I'm not seeing hands. I guess I have one question of all of you who are doing these loan programs. I'm wondering about the loan part of it. Like, are you thinking about trying to get people devices that they can have permanently? And if any of you know if there's any grant programs to do that. It sounded like your program was, is that getting people devices permanently, or is yours a loan program also?
So, oh gee, I lost you for a second there. Okay. Ours right now, it is a loan program, but we have an agreement that we have residents sign. And to be honest with you, it's very loose. They just agree to continue to engage in our programs, which it can include monthly community meetings, the chair aerobics exercise class, or in our partner programs. And so, it's not a big leap for folks. There's a lot of trust that we have on our side. And then they're agreeing to, take care of the property. It's their responsibility, keep it within their possession and not allow it for use by others, and, those kind of basic terms. But we anticipate folks, using it long term. We don't foresee us going, oh, now give us that back. We really are expecting them to use it for their personal needs, as well as engaging with Wayfinders programs and partner programs.
And Becky, this is James. I think through the Mass Council on Aging, some COAs have gotten secured devices, or even just through other grant programs that they've let people have and keep. But I will say, through sort of some of our partnerships with libraries, not the Worcester one, but separate, one of the benefits to having libraries loan it out is that they have to come back in and they can ask if, librarians can ask if they're experiencing any issues, if they have any questions, or sometimes the older adults just say, this is great, but I'm having this issue, and then they can get that support. So that sort of touch point allows some kind of impromptu training and education to happen. So in that way, it's, it's a benefit, even though the older adult can't keep it themselves.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, we're partnering with Dress for Success. So, which I know probably feels like, how did that happen? But I'm part of the Digital Equity Alliance, which is a stakeholder group here in Western Mass. And Margaret Tantillo, who's the executive director of Dress for Success in Western Mass, was also part of that. And I think we were just so passionate about, digital access, and particularly for underserved folks in Springfield, our client base. And we started sort of chatting offline even about, like, how do we mitigate this? What do we do? And so they, on their own, started a training program with IT coaches and volunteers for clients who were doing workforce development work. And they were able to put some structure in place. And so I said, well, do you think you'd be willing to work with older adults? I know you're usually working with younger women. They said, let's give it a try. And so for us, it's really a pilot for both sides, both of us. So the challenge is Wayfinders IT has not committed to do sort of that behind the scenes work. And we're relying on the coaches from Dress for Success to assist us with that. And just my team, our teams, working with the residents as well.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. If I don't see you, please just unmute.
This is Marie Westberg from Northampton. I was just going to say that we decided early on to keep it a loan program and just do long-term loans, especially if we could get more devices. And there was a private donor who stepped up, and that allowed us to actually hire our volunteer, so that she's basically able to then help with the foundational work of getting more volunteers and students involved in being tech support. But this purchasing the iPads with SIM cards in them was what we chose to do in terms of a short-term loan to get seniors who might not have had experience with tech before, and maybe didn't didn't know whether they really wanted to commit to buying a device on their own or a long-term loan. And so basically it's required that they sign an agreement and have a training, and then they can have it for 30 days and try it out. And if they continue to want to use it after that, then the tech support person helps them to get their own internet, and we give them a long-term loan of a device that doesn't have a SIM card. And I know a lot of places don't have the funding to pay for that the SIM card connection, but it is a nice feature to have, because it basically just makes it, it's sort of ready from the beginning, and the senior doesn't have to experience that frustration of having to go somewhere where there's Wi-Fi. Or we had a lot of seniors sitting on our benches outside the building using the Wi-Fi, and then the weather got bad, and so we just thought, this is what we need to do. The trainings were happening outside last summer, so when we had to move it indoors, we added more devices, and we just expanded. But I think giving devices permanently, we just felt like that might lead to problems like, people not, like James was saying, not really continuing to be engaged with it, and it just gathering dust and not getting used, and things like that. And, maybe down the line, I think that because the schools are implementing so many devices, that we may be able to do some kind of sort of reuse program where when they get new ones, we get their old ones. And then the tech department does upkeep on them.
Thank you. That sounds great. Okay, I guess we can talk about the next quarterly meeting. Does this day work well for people? This is the second Tuesday at 1 o'clock, and looks like we got a pretty good crew here. I had done a short survey after the last meeting, and got 11 responses. And it looked like some topics of interest would be housing and transportation. So I have put together a evaluation form, which I will share in the chat. This was just votes on topics for the next meeting. So this is the evaluation form. Oops, let me just share that in the chat. But does anyone have thoughts on specific things you'd like to hear about housing, different types of housing? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I mean, I'll just say that DHCD at the state level has folks that'll present on the housing choice law that was passed. And I know we're at the Healthy Aging Collaborative in our network, we've been talking a lot about that, because that could be a huge development, no pun intended, for getting more housing for older adults, housing choice as the name implies, but also more affordable housing. So that might be an option of it's a relatively brief presentation they can do too, that just kind of lets everybody know like what
Maybe
changed, what's going on.
Maybe also about evictions.
That's a good idea.
I'll add, Becky, that at PHI, we're looking at wrapping up a health impact assessment regarding older adults in Corey. Older adults who have a criminal background history but are facing access barriers to the housing due to the Corey that they carry with them through their life. This is an equity conversation, but our lead teammate, Kim Gilhooly, is wrapping up this HIA report, and she will be done in June. I don't know quite when we're going to meet again, but her findings are very telling and also powerful, because it speaks to the heart of the voices of older adults who are experiencing this, and then the recommendations that the Housing Authority can do to improve that barrier gap for folks. So whether it's the look back period of how long someone could have to look back on their criminal history to get access to public housing, or the process itself and when folks are denied from the beginning to the very end of the chain, they're being denied. And that's a long waiting process for someone that's looking for stability.
Thank you. Yeah, I did hear from Kim on that. So yeah, the next quarterly meeting would be in June, so it would be second Tuesday in June. And I will sign up.
I was just going to say that the discussion on housing, I think, is important because it came up a lot in our listening sessions with our age-friendly committees, that people who don't qualify for subsidized housing or low-income housing, that there's a lot of seniors who want to downsize who don't fit into that category. There's a gap, an income gap. And so a lot of people really want to know about different kinds of housing that maybe isn't being developed yet, that could be, so I mean, I don't think that the zoning has yet been changed to reflect all the options that people might be interested in.
Yeah, I know Northampton allows like tiny houses as accessory dwelling units. So that's one thing that could be of interest. And also there's a lot of examples of kind of innovative senior housing, like co-housing and intergenerational housing. So maybe we'll try to get some examples of that too. Okay, and Caitlin says trauma-informed approaches to senior housing. You want to say more about that, Caitlin?
Yeah, I don't even know, like, I'm just throwing out there what I think would be interesting, but, I just know when I talk to folks who are living in low income or subsidized housing, a lot of the challenges they have are around re-traumatization with the way things like inspections or evictions are handled. And so if there are any examples out there of people who are taking, or organizations or housing developers that are taking an explicitly trauma-informed approach to providing housing, that'd be really interesting to me.
Thank you. Okay. Also, we have an advisory committee now, which is James and Samantha and Roseanne Martotia from West Mass Elder Care. A few of you did express interest, and we welcome anyone else who wants to be part of an advisory committee. So I think Rebecca had volunteered, and Mary Beth Ogilevich, and one more, Cindy Langley. But anyone else, just email me. We are planning to meet on April 9th. So I'll just send out a notice of that to everyone. And if anyone else wants to join us, that would be great. But thank you all for coming, and thank you for those of you who presented. And it would be great to get those slides, Sinan, to distribute to everyone too. And this has been recorded, so I'll send out the link for the recording as well.
Can I ask you one quick question before I let you go? Well, I have you all here. Just how do the people that get the loaner laptops, what's the process of getting it to them? Is it them coming to you for assistance? How do you decide who gets a loaner, I guess?
So it starts out with an intake form, basically, and then in the good weather months, we can actually take the device out to them and meet with them on their porch or in a park somewhere that has internet access, or if it's SIM card enabled. In this inclement weather, they come to our space.
So it's usually like an incoming inquiry rather than any sort of like outgoing promotional type of, reaching out to them directly for the most part.
Yeah, we do both.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And John, for us, because we wanted to start directly with people we were previously engaged with. We already had sort of a foundation to work from. We're hoping to see it grow. So that is something we'll explore. But similar to what Jay said, we went out and we're still actually going out. We have a staff member who's going to a home and then actually calling and helping set up by phone.
Great, thank you. All right, thanks everybody for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and hope to see you all soon. Okay, we'll see you later.